Are we recording? Is this thing on?
Yes, it is. Welcome to RevOps 500, where we invite the world's top marketers to answer the tough questions facing growing organizations.
Ooh, sounds important.
I'm Sajeel Qureshi.
And I'm Gil Bates. Join us as we dive deep into the world of RevOps.
We'll be learning strategies and expertise from first-hand experience. RevOps 500 is sponsored by Computan. They provide technical and development expertise to growth-focused marketing teams.
Let's get started.
Hey everybody, Sajeel Qureshi here with another episode of RevOps 500, where we interview some of the world's greatest and latest RevOps engineers. Today, we have a very, very special guest on the show. I'm extremely excited to be talking to them. He's a leader, he's a data professional, he's very hardworking, he's incredibly creative. He's the director of RevOps at GoBolt, Saurabh Sanganee. Nice to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Sajeel. Such a pleasure to be on the show.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're pumped that you're here too. So, let's get right into it. So, Saurabh, what is one RevOps myth that you can think of?
Great question. I think the biggest myths that I can think of that I've come across is that, we're just CRM or Salesforce admins, which then, just makes us sort of, assistants to like the IC, like A's, AMs and all that. I feel that's like the biggest myth that's out there that's kind of sitting on the shoulders of all RevOps leaders to kind of break, because that is exactly what we're not, even though that's kind of part of our job description. That's what I would say. This is the biggest RevOps myth that I've come across.
Okay, so why do you think that myth exists exactly? Why do you think people think that, RevOps people are just the guys who are doing the product support for HubSpot, Salesforce, Marketo, whatever?
Oh, that's I think that's a big can of worms, and so I think the biggest reason that I see is revenue operations or like business operations is such a new space, and it all starts with taking control and managing the inputs, which is Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever CRM that you're using. And then you're often reporting into like a revenue generating functions. You're competing with that shiny object, like the AE, like that really high shiny object enterprise AE bringing those big dollars, and you're always going to have that one-to-one comparison. Whereas your roles and responsibilities are like taking care of Salesforce, making sure all the fields are up to date, the UI is great, workflows are working, automation's good. um, I think that's one of the biggest reasons. That said, like it's such a critical part of the job, because I'd say the most important part of what RevOps does is the outputs. The ensuring that data is clean, because you want to provide all the insights and analytics and therefore make those recommendations. So I feel like it's an entire end-to-end process, and because we're responsible for the inputs, and that's because we're responsible for the outputs and the recommendations. And that's why I just kind of feel that myth kind of exists, and also like understand that since I mentioned at the get-go, it's so new. Like there's no education, if I may, for RevOps. Like people who come from an older generation of sales, they haven't really interacted with RevOps. They don't know effectively what RevOps does. There's no like, you've got like the challenger sales methodology and all that. Like there's no RevOps methodology, quote unquote. So I'd say like it's still new. Lots of education, needs to be done. I see so many thought leaders out there between now and when I started. So I feel we are progressing in that direction, but I think we're a long way away from there.
Absolutely. And when it comes to the actual, you mentioned a lot of stuff there. You talked about data cleansing and, alignment of sales, alignment with marketing, those sorts of things. Uh, is any one of those things keeping you up at night these days? I mean, are you struggling with any of those things right now, or what?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a common struggle that we face. And we also had like a really strong strategic shift at GoBolt, where this year all the revenue functions now report into one leader who is effectively my boss as well. I think that's a significant shift, but now the real building begins, right? How do you eliminate some of those silos? How do you, ensure that the strategy that's implemented on one team is not just implemented in a silo? How do we make sure that both revenue building functions, AEs and AMs, are collectively included in the same? For example, like we're running a new promo strategy, like how do we make sure we include both of them? Or if we're thinking about a new enablement session for the account executives and how to use a new prospecting tool, we also want to think about getting the AMs on, but also like how do we get sales and marketing alignment on a new campaign that we're running? Um, even from a revenue building, like a modeling perspective, this was a really big initiative, as is with most organizations in Q4 of the year. Um, which is we were looking to build our revenue plan for 2023, and we wanted to make sure that we allocated 8% of pipeline and revenue to marketing, to the BDRs, to AEs, and then there's a chicken and the egg that comes along, like who should get how much, historical trends, so on and so forth. But yeah, like right now, as we like, coming back to your initial question, is it does keep me up at night. We are building collectively in this new function. We're defining what some of these new functions look like. Because like GoBolt, even though like we operate like our internal operations right now looks very, very close to SaaS, but we're not SaaS. Like we were like a 3PL provider. We've got extremely expensive assets that we have to ensure drive the right P&Ls. So the functions are different and SaaS, but like that's what keeps me up at night, is how to make sure that all of these teams have the right strategic alignment.
And how are you planning on solving that problem?
First is
The
just
strategic alignment problem. How are you going to solve that? It's a big one. So.
it is no, it certainly is, right. It's not something that I'll solve in a day or in a month.
Right.
It's I think the biggest leap forward that we made was bringing all of these different functions into like one team, right? And which we now call as the revenue team or the go-to-market team. We're still figuring out the name. But what that allows me to do is first and foremost build a single view of the customer. Like one of our biggest wins that we're looking to celebrate, and I might be celebrating with Sudhar, is to bring our last team, which is the implementations team, also into Salesforce, into our CRM. What that's really going to allow us to do is have one single view of the customer. And then the goal is like one step forward towards, working towards the strategy is to build one single view of the customer. Like it's as simple as going into Lucidchart and then mapping out exactly what happens internally when a merchant goes onto our website, they fill out the form, who does that lead, how does that lead come into HubSpot, who does it get routed to, what's our time to first response, who looks at it, the stages that it goes through, and then through and through all the way through, uh, sure, right? Okay, it goes to an account manager. Once we get the signature, it goes to an account manager, they manage it. We've got different processes there as well. And then that merchant continues to exist with us or HR, right? So that like just is building the whole mind map of the customer journey, the buyer journey. I think that's really going to help us move leaps and bounds, really going to help us identify some of those gaps that we have, leads that we're letting go. Um, we want to make sure that no lead is left behind, no op is left behind, and every merchant that we've strategized for is taken care of.
So, Saurabh, I mean, you've got to get buy-in from many different places. I mean, you talked about the implementations team, you've talked about marketing, you talked about sales, you talked about ops. I mean, like, how are you going to get them all to play ball with something like this?
That's a big one. Thankfully, I've got like the most amazing people, here at GoBolt
That's
who
good.
kind of brought into that vision. And I think that's the most important thing for RevOps. I often joke with our sales team. I'm like, guys, you guys sell and you can have a 25% win rate. We guys are selling as well, but we have to have 100% win rate. Like I can not go with this idea to our VP of account management and have it be shot down. Like I have to, and it's all about like building that initial relationship with each of the right, like each VP across each team, having that trust, that trust built up with them, with finance, with my boss, with the ELT, who then allow you to allocate time and resources towards a project like this. So and then the way I've kind of built RevOps here, and I've taken this from one of our thought leaders on LinkedIn, is RevOps is based on 4 pillars. Like, and then the first one is people. Like, it's people, process, technology, and data. And people is the first one that I often highlight on, because our clients are all of these things, right? And we want to make sure that we're supporting them to get to like the highest revenue, meet their goals effectively. And it's so critical for us to build those relationships. And it's those relationships that are really going to get us, hit our goals for the year. So that's the first step that we embark on. Once we build those relationships at a personal level, that then translates to brainstorming on how we can basically drive home the goals that we have for this year. And then we start strategizing. And then I think all of that said, the most important thing is we're all collectively focused on one single goal. And then like AM team, the AE team, they do what they do. And then I do what I do. And then they trust me to do a good job. I trust them to do a good job.
So now that looks like a peaceful, harmonious utopia in some ways, right? Because it's like a very futuristic holding hands under the rainbows sort of scenario. I mean, if it could come across, do you think something like that is the future of RevOps? Like, I mean, the ability to have total nirvana bliss between AEs, AMs, RevOps engineers, is that like really the total end game for any RevOps organization?
Yes. So I would actually go a step forward and say, I think it is table stakes for RevOps to reach the end game, right? Like, I know it sounds like all sunshine and rainbows. I can assure you that it's not. And any RevOps leader listening to this right now is like, what is this guy talking about? Like, that's not the reality, right? But it's not. Like, hey, it's
Yeah.
not that. And that's why, it's leaders like us who have to build towards it. Like, that's the North Star. And when we go into a new organization tasked with building out the function, the first thing we do is build those relationships. It's like, building those relationships with your prospects. You do the initial research. I've gone to the extent of stalking some of my quote unquote prospects on like Instagram, like beyond LinkedIn, understanding what their personal interests are. Um,
Yeah.
and then once you do that, once you build that working relationship, same as sales, then you start talking shop, you start talking business, then you put in, your proposal, and then it goes into negotiation and you close the deal. So I think it's certainly not that. It is the North Star. And then I think, like, I truly believe that we're all here to build the company together. And even that's how I speak to all the different leaders across the organization, is we're here to build the company together. We're here to drive growth. We're here to make sure that the customers that come in are extremely happy with us. And then we do bring the right customers in, and the right merchants in. And as long as we're all aligned towards that same goal, I think it is extremely easy to agree to disagree, to proceed, even though like you and I would disagree on a specific strategy. So it's very, very easier said than done. Sounds very esoteric, but what I do is I kind of keep this written down in front of me every day, and that really allows me to take a step back, take a 30,000 feet view, take stock of what exactly I'm doing, and then really allow me to get back in the weeds of things.
Got it. So now you said something very, 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 particular. You said that you would, before you even start working on the processes or the technology, you focused on the people. And you said that these and your people, these are like your colleagues at GoBolt, right? These are like your coworkers, basically. You
Yes.
would go onto their Instagram and you would kind of learn about them personally to build a rapport with them before you start going in for the ask of buying into some sort of ideas. Now, is that something most RevOps engineers are doing, or is that just something that you're doing?
Uh, so I see most RevOps engineers not do that, because
Okay.
um, a bit of a controversial statement, but like, I think we're all nerds. So like we love numbers.
Yeah.
We love the math of it. We love, we're extremely technical. You tell me to build an integration between like demand base and Salesforce. Like, I don't know, like, I'll do it. I'll sit up all night. I'll read the technical specs. Like that's what really excites me. But and that's good when you are, in like a RevOps engineer role, but then when you're leading a function, your 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 job is to understand all of that, but also translate back on how it drives revenue and how it
Yeah.
impacts the business. At the end of the day, it's all about the revenue. And when I talk to, honest my counterparts across the different teams, they don't really care about the integration. They don't care about reading that technical specification sheet. They care about revenue, and that's what they're focused on. And these are sharks, right? These are very,
Yeah.
very aggressive sharks, who are and that's who they're supposed to be.
Yes.
Otherwise they'll not really be good at their jobs. So I feel understanding the person, their personality, how they think, how they like to be presented information, how they like to make decisions will really make RevOps leaders successful. Because, at the end of the day, these people are your clients. When you are presenting a proposal to them, you're asking them for their time and resources that is not focused on negotiating or like reaching out to any prospect or signing a contract, right? Like, but I think for them, even though they may spend 3 hours of the day just chatting around, like that's okay. But like, even then, like asking for RevOps time is more of a cost center to them. And I think once you build that relationship, I think it really, really allows them to see value in why this is really going to drive strategic wins, both in the short
Mhm.
term and the long term. So I think at the end of the day, like it's people, right? Like people make businesses, even though right now the world is in the opposite direction. But I feel like people are the most important piece to a business.
Yeah, I mean, like it's an interesting perspective. Like I mean, it's most people have a hard time getting things done at work because of dealing with people in different ways. But I've never heard about that really in a RevOps context myself until now. And then your approach of selling concepts to people, and you call them sharks. And these are salespeople, marketing people. I mean, they don't want to deal with the data; they just want to know about revenue. So you have to frame the messaging in the right way and understand motivations, and yeah, maybe searching about what their interests are and finding out more about them as people shows that gets you that respect with them and that trust. You're trying to build trust, and that can be built in many different ways as a RevOps engineer. It's not just with the charts and the tech stack. It can be done with
Yes.
soft skills too.
Yeah, absolutely. And one piece that I really that I've really learned over the last year is like human beings are inherently like biological animals, right?
Hmm.
No, I said that wrong. We're like social animals. Biologically, we're social animals. Sorry about that. But
Hmm.
I feel like when you meet someone in person, you do a walk and talk, you go for a coffee chat, understand like, how they're spending their weekend, what their plans are for like Valentine's Day. And it's just so timely as well. Understand what their challenges are. Like, someone's looking to buy a new house and, they're saving up for like a down payment. Someone's saving up to buy a ring for their, to propose. And it's just like connecting at that personal level really transform. And it doesn't have to be in person. Like it can also be over Zoom and Google Meets these days, but
Sure.
really understanding them at a personal level uh moves like it just moves mountains at work, right? Like really taking the effort to understand them, at a personal level. And I learned this a lot like last year because I was reporting into the VP of sales, VP of revenue, and like clearly like her like building relationships is just kind of in her DNA. And just seeing her do work the way that she did, it really, forced me to reflect on my operating procedures and my operating principles. And this is one key important piece that I learned from her.
Got it. Yeah, it's an amazing thing to hear from a RevOps engineer about soft skills. I really like that. Uh, let's talk about like, a little bit, I mean, from back in the day. You've been doing this for a while. I know, you're at GoBolt now. You were at Pavilion before, I believe. What is, did you always know you were going to be doing RevOps work? I mean, you're at Clearco, TradeGecko, different places. I mean, did you always know that you were going to be doing RevOps and stuff like that, or?
Uh, oh, no, no, no. I had no idea what RevOps was. Funny enough, I actually lied on my resume or to get to my first job in RevOps that I knew Salesforce. We like when we were at school, we were made to do like 12 trailheads. I think like I'm pretty confident most of us cheated. I'd say all of us cheated. You know, if you put in the wrong
Wow.
answer, it gives you the right answer. But I still put it on my resume that I knew 12, like I'd done 12 trailheads, very, very good with Salesforce. Rest assured, I had no idea. I'd never like logged into like a true Salesforce org. And I somehow I think my boss at that time, he's still a great mentor right now. Like I think he knows it. And like my resume, he still kind of took me on. And then my first day, he's like, "Yes, Rob, like just go into Salesforce and do ABC." And I'm like, "Oh my God, how am I going to do this? I have no idea." It was Salesforce Classic back then. There was no Lightning.
Okay.
Um,
Sure.
but then that's when I learned the power of Google. Was I started like, I'm like, wait, I can't ask anyone because, you know, I've
Yeah.
got my resume. So I started going on Google and started Googling stuff. And that's when I realized that you can Google your way through your career. So, you know, I really have learned the power of Google, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, you kind of accidentally got into there by hook or by
Yeah.
crook. You got into RevOps, and now let's talk about that mentor a little bit. Who was that mentor? Do you want to? I mean, can you tell us a bit about him, or?
Yeah, for sure. So he's my first boss. His name is James McKay. He's actually leading like finance, HR, and a bunch of teams at this like software company called Slash. He kind of hired me, you know, took me on, mentored me in this space, and he gave me my first job in this space. And I remember explicitly he sat me down, and he's drawing the whole sales funnel, explaining me definitions of MQL, SQL, SAL, how
Sure.
it becomes an opportunity. So yeah, he also helped me out like you know, how I should be negotiating for my salary, which is often something that doesn't happen with a direct boss. And then like, you know, helped me out with like jobs that follow that organization. And he continues to like help me out with challenges that I face today as well. So yeah, great mentor, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, James sounds like a really good guy. Let's go back in time now a little bit. I'm going to switch gears a bit on you, sorry. I mean, let's say you get to meet yourself when you were 20 years old. So maybe about a year or two ago. I know you're a young guy, you're grasshopper compared to
Yeah.
me, but I mean, like, what would you, what kind of advice would you give yourself, like, to 20-year-old Sarah?
I'd say this is very cliched, but like focus on focus on studies. I was really bad. I was really bad at my studies, like ridiculously bad, like laughably bad. Um, Funny enough, and I say this, and it often scares a bunch of people at work. Like I failed at math. And for a RevOps leader to say that, you know, the person failed that he failed at math, it's a scary thing. So, and then the second is taking it easy, right? Like oftentimes at that age, you're putting so much pressure on yourself. Um, to like get into business, you know, have your own startup, like you tried a bunch of things, get into the job market, start making money. Now I miss my school days, or like you don't have to focus on meeting deadlines and targets and strategy. You get up, go to school, have some fun, meet some friends, and come back. So I think just taking it easy, but most importantly, just doing well at school. But like on a serious note, I think what I would tell is like be a bit more focused. I think it's always good. Like when you don't like when you don't plan, you basically plan to fail, right? Like if you fail to plan, you plan to
Yes,
fail. So I think like
exactly.
having, and that's what I follow with myself and my team as well, is it's so critical to have a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan, but also acknowledging that 90% of the time that plan's not going to go through. So that's what I would kind of talk to my, you know, tell my 20-year-old self.
Yeah, just to enjoy it a bit more, focus on your studies a bit. So it looks like we have a
Yeah.
lot in common. I failed a math course growing up too. So, I mean, we have that in common.
Hey, it was, I mean,
So
if I had to go and go back to my math teacher, like, I think it'll be a big screw you moment. I'm like, hey, man, like, I failed math, but like, hey, so, yeah, it's
what
certainly,
what what
certainly
what
fun.
was the math class that you feel was it like a just a calculus or finite, or was it what was statistics? What was
It,
what
wa-
was it?
it was exactly that. It was probability and statistics. So which is even more ironic, which is like even more ironic. There was legit like probability and statistics is what I feel, man. I passed the second time, but I barely passed. Like it's pretty funny. That's literally what I do
Man,
for a living now. So
but yeah, but I mean, but what does that tell you about yourself? I guess, right? But you failed it. Now you have the story to tell, and you can still do something even though you don't in statistics, even though you failed statistics. I mean, that's pretty interesting.
yeah, yeah. I mean, see, the way I see it, I think like it doesn't matter. Like really, if you look at some of the biggest leaders, Fortune 500, like they were average or mediocre when it comes to their education. They were like like some of them would be dropouts, but I don't really talk about their stories because they're like one in a trillion. But
Sure,
I was more of a visual learner. Like I was more of a practical learner. Like you gave me a book, you told me like learn this. This is how it works. I'm like, no, that's not how I learn. I need to like implement it. I need to play around with it. Like for example, you give me a new software to explore. I need to first like spend some time with it, get familiar with it, try it a couple of times, make some mistakes. I'm more of a experience-based, visual-based learner than someone who can learn theoretically based out of books. And that's just what I learned more about myself. And I see like the education system kind of doesn't really support that. It's more about, hey, here's a few books, like, eat all of that up, throw all of it up in your exams. And then that's kind of a representation of how smart you are. But I think it's not. It's more about how do you learn all of that and then translate it to life, right?
sure.
And I think like that's the piece that I really found missing.
Okay, so visual learner, fails statistics. What I mean, what does a visual learner who fails statistics and works in RevOps do for fun? I mean, it's got to be some sort of a story there. I mean,
I love being in the outdoors. Like when I'm not doing DevOps strategy, I'm often like, I mean, I'm based out of Toronto. So like one good thing that Ontario has done is there's so many provincial parks. I think I've visited most, if not all, in the 200-kilometer radius. So I'm often going hiking. Just try to involve myself in as many sports as I can. Just trying out like new pubs around, like around the block, new restaurants, meeting new people. That's something that really, really excites me. It's just meeting new people, understanding who they are, what they do, experiencing their lives. So like, yeah, that's what I do for fun is hiking. So if I'm not in front of my laptop, there's a 90% chance I'm hiking in some remote, area of Ontario. So yeah.
yeah, yeah, and like when you're out there hiking, I mean, do you see any parallels between hiking and what you do at work all the time? I mean, do you see any? Is there some sort of conclusions you can draw? I mean, like maybe the grind of it, the blocking and the tackling. I mean, what do you see if any parallels?
Uh, that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that, but now that I think about it, like that triggers so many thoughts. I think hiking is more about the journey, but the destination is so fulfilling, right? The more I want to think, the more strenuous the hike becomes. And in RevOps, like when I was talking to this about my boss last evening, it's like solving problems in the unknown is kind of in all of our job descriptions and like, bold, size 14, like that's what we do. And when you're out there hiking, you don't, I mean, yes, sometimes you've got those, marks on trees that tell you where to go. Oftentimes, like they're not, like most times they are. Like just, finding your own path, figuring out the maps. I often try and not use Google Maps, just finding the route, finding the map, going all the way to the destination. And then once you reach there, what I'm really addicted to is the view and the satisfaction of that like 10-kilometer hike. Once you reach that point at the top, the view of the mountains and the lake below is the river below is absolutely amazing. And that's what I feel is RevOps. That's what I feel is the startup space, the SaaS space, is you make sense of all the chaos. And I feel people who've been in this game long enough are really addicted to that chaos. I
Yeah,
feel like if that chaos doesn't exist, if that stress doesn't exist, I don't think I'll be good. I'll be productive that day. And I need the intensity. I need the chaos. And that's what draw parallels with hiking. Like there's so much intensity. You've got time bound. The sun's going to go down. You got to come back.
You got to come
Got to
back.
be careful about like snakes and stuff on the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I really find interesting about hiking.
Yeah. It's kind of like, you made a good point. So, you said that you've got on a hike, there's so much that you have to deal with, right? There's predators, there's other people, there's the way back, there's the sunlight, there's your own
Yeah.
physical capabilities. And in RevOps, those are all out of your hands, right? You have predators, you have daylight, you have all these factors which are out of your control. You don't know when a snake's going to show up or a fox or whatever, or deer, that kind of thing. And you don't, and in RevOps, like you don't know. Sometimes there's turnover in the organization. You got to bring somebody new in and you have to explain this whole thing to them all over again. There's all these parallels between those two things and like the, the dependencies of other things that are way out of your control.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I learned as a RevOps leader is to be extremely comfortable with change, because in organizations at early stage of their growth, there's so much change happening. Every minute there's change happening. There's so much unknown in front of you. Because now you're working with new leaders, and I say this because this is so timely, because we just had a big change. Some, like, all of the people that I was working with have now changed into like a complete new set of people. So I have to go back to scratch. I have to go back to what I was doing last year, build all the infrastructure up, build all of that again. And then you're trying, I think it's, like one of my mentors, he said, I asked him, like, hey, is it like, how do you keep doing the exact same thing again and again in different jobs? And he's like, Rob, that's not it. It's more about the how. It's how you approach it. Right? Even if you're building dashboards again, right? Even if you're building the model you for the new year again, it's more about the how that really changes. And that's what comes with experience. That's what comes with, okay, hey, I tried to do it this way last time in a previous life and it failed. And that's the feedback that you provide. So I think solving some of those problems that don't necessarily have a set solution, being comfortable with the unknown, not having all the answers all the time. And sometimes, like, I am extremely anal about like perfection. Like I need things to be done in a specific way. And sometimes my team gives me a hard time about it. But some, like, you learn over times, like sometimes, and there are very few times, like 80% are good enough, right? Speed is at times, more important than accuracy. And this is something my uncle would say when I was growing up. And he's like, Saurabh, like, always focus on speed and accuracy, speed and accuracy. Like that's and all throughout my day, multiple times in the day, like, his voice keeps ringing in my head. So you have to operate with speed and accuracy. That's what RevOps does. You have to walk and you have to operate with speed, and you're running towards the unknown, and you're solving problems that often have not been solved before. Because, the RevOps community is just beginning to build, and like,
Just beginning to build.
like the thing that you're doing right now, through the RevOps 500 podcast and communities is doing exactly that, right? Like, so it's still beginning to build, and oftentimes you find yourself alone solving that problem, and then that's what this is, and you got to get comfortable with that, and then go with the information that you have and see what you can control.
That's it's a great way of looking at it. So where can our listeners get a hold of you and connect with you?
LinkedIn all the way. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. It's almost always open as a tab. I love having conversations with peers and just brainstorming. It doesn't have to be about a consulting gig. Doesn't have to be about a job. Like, I think that's what
Yeah,
LinkedIn's been about. Like, doesn't have to be about selling something. Sometimes it just needs to be, just they want to vent, rant. I'm here to listen. I'll probably vent a bit myself, but LinkedIn's the best way
sure.
to kind of reach out to me.
Yeah, and then the company site is gobolt.com,
Yes.
GOBOLT.com. Nice.
Yes. Yes.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation, Saurabh. I don't think we've ever had a RevOps expert come on to talk about how they're, you know, reaching out to colleagues on Instagram or tying the parallels of hiking to RevOps before. And cheating on their resume. These are all kind of battle scars that you have that I don't think anybody else has. So, it's been a very big pleasure just to have you on, and thank you for being here.
I just hope I don't get fired after this. I'm kidding. But no, it's such a pleasure to be here, and yeah, like, it was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And, just for anybody listening, thanks a lot for tuning in. If you learned something or if you laughed a little or had a good time, just tell someone about the podcast. We can get more people on the train. And yeah, thanks again, Sarah, for coming on.
Thank you so much. Have a good time.
All right, this has been another exciting episode of RevOps 500. We will see you all next time. Thanks a lot. And that wraps up another episode of RevOps 500. Thanks for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at RevOps500.com. RevOps 500 is sponsored by CompuTech, providing technical and development expertise to growth-focused marketing teams.